What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B Schaefer Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you, live from Birmingham, Alabama, on the heels of the Cardinals' win over the Giants on Thursday at Rickwood Field. What a celebration of baseball, of the Negro Leagues, of Willie Mays, and of just a really special venue that we got to experience on Thursday night. A lot of fun down in Birmingham. And of course, it's all made a little bit better when the Cardinals get the win. So we'll talk about it coming up on this edition of B Schaefer Daily. Appreciate you guys for bearing with me. The audio, I know, does not sound the way that it normally does. I had my wife even buy me a USB mic that I could more easily pack for a road trip. And I'm going to say I might have to put it on blast, like out Walmart, for the very low quality of this microphone. I'm actually not even using it because I'm convinced that my computer microphone, as bad as this sounds, is actually higher quality than the overmodulated piece of crap that Walmart sold my wife. So I do have the receipt for that, and we're going to go ahead and get our money back there. But enough about me complaining about the technical issues that I experience seemingly every podcast. Let's talk some Cardinals baseball, as the Redbirds really did show out in Birmingham with a 6-5 win over the Giants. Offensively, the tone was set by none other than Masyn Winn, and would there be any doubt about it, with this being a celebration of the Negro League great players that came before, and now Masyn Winn picking up that mantle as a young black man, showing the world and young black kids that may look to follow in his footsteps how to play the game the right way, how to have fun doing it, and how to be a great ambassador and role model. Masyn Winn was the star of the show down here in Birmingham, not only on the field, but also on the field. It was impressive to just see the way that he carried himself in press conferences and going about his business down here, but then actually in the game, being a true tone setter for the Cardinals in this one. Had the big double off the scoreboard out there in left field, scored a couple of runs. He reached base his first two times, scoring twice. Really nice job by Masyn Winn on the field, and like I said, off the field, was a good ambassador for this event, which just went off without a hitch. I really credit Major League Baseball for the job they did, obviously pouring some money into Rickwood Field and sprucing up the place, because if you had been down here a number of months ago even, it didn't really look like this. And so it took a lot to pull it off. And I really am hopeful that after an event like this, MLB will consider coming back here and continuing to inject some life into this historic venue. It's so interesting to think about, and so many elements of it were honestly pretty emotional. And this is one of those things where you're like, well, Brendan, why would you be emotional about it? You know, you're not black. You don't have anything to do with the Negro Leagues. But my goodness, to experience the appreciation, you're down here and you're in it, and I just could not help but be overcome by some emotion, especially when you were seeing the pregame ceremonies. And I believe Fox did a pretty good job. I was not obviously watching too locked in on the broadcast because I was at the game, but I believe, from what I understand, Fox did a really good job of sort of taking you there. And they had the drones and took some really good shots of the ballpark. The visuals were fantastic. But I believe with the pregame as well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but at home, you guys could see some of what was going on in the ceremonies there before the game even began. And I mean, they had both teams lined up, and you had Negro League players. Many were seated in wheelchairs. I mean, these guys are getting up there in age, of course, those who were able to be there, but just an incredible display. And in this ballpark where they played, a lot of them may have played, and you have a 99-year-old gentleman throwing out the first pitch. And you just get a sense for how special these gentlemen are, and how special it is what they did. Really breaking down barriers where, as Reggie Jackson talked about, if you saw his conversation with the desk there on the Fox panel, I guess this must have been pregame as well, but I saw the Twitter video floating around there on social media to basically say this is a tough place for him to come back to, because he wasn't treated well, right? Like, fans mistreating him, mistreating his teammates, and talking about the journey that it took for Reggie Jackson to, if not for a number of managers and coaches and teammates having his back, white teammates that made sure that when they would go into restaurants, that if Reggie couldn't eat, none of them were eating there. If Reggie couldn't stay at the team hotel, none of them were staying at that hotel. And just the bravery that it was involved from a lot of people to be able to break down the color barrier, that was such a real thing. And in many ways, we're still dealing with racism in this country, but just wonderful to see the celebration of all the positive qualities of those who laid the foundation for generations that came after them, and then to kind of see that thread connected through a guy like Masyn Winn. I don't know, man. It was special. I can't even describe quite how cool it was to be here and to get to experience this. I've been telling people, like, this honestly for me might be the coolest event that I've ever gotten the chance to cover in my career doing this sports media thing for 8 years or so. And I mean, I covered the Winter Classic with the Blues, Stanley Cup when the Blues were in it. I covered some of those games, Cardinal playoff games. I mean, this was really cool, man. This was really, really cool. And you just got a sense that everybody involved in it understood that it was something bigger than them. Like, it was a game, and we are going to get to the nuts and bolts of the game as we always do on this podcast, because we do cover the Cardinals, and that's the main squeeze here. But I just wanted to spend some time as I sort of got into Masyn Winn and what he contributed to this game. You just got a great sense for how it was about much more than just the game. And it was something that the Cardinals and Ollie Marmol understood real well. That was the question I asked him pregame when he was at the podium is, you guys got a lot going on in your season right now. How do you find the balance here of trying to keep the task at hand of getting wins and trying to improve your standing in the standings versus everything going on here today? And he said, he doesn't really look at it that way, and this is only positive. There's no burden to this. This is something that they're really excited to do and be a part of. And I really did. I'm not even just trying to be sugarcoating anything here or to be disingenuous. I really think that everybody involved on both sides that I got a chance to witness kind of behind the scenes and how they interacted with this event and how they felt about it. I really do think it was something special for a lot of people, and really handled the right way. Props to MLB. Sometimes I criticize Rob Manfred. We always kind of come after the umpires or different things that certainly we are not fond of always the way that MLB handles things. I think they did a bang up job with this one. I really did. It was a really, really good event. And there were a lot of big names here. Albert Pujols was in the celebrity softball game last night. I didn't get a chance to go to that because I didn't make the drive down to Birmingham until Wednesday night. And I actually got into town at like 5:30 in the morning. I slept till about 11, and then went to meet some of the other writers in St. Louis media, at a barbecue place that happened to be like a couple blocks from the Airbnb that I'm staying in. So that was really fortunate. I told them the restaurant y'all picked was probably the one restaurant in Birmingham that I could have made it to by 11:30 because I was asleep until 11. So I hopped up, took a shower, and went on down there and met him. But I guess there was a reason they picked it. I'm going to shout the place out. It's called Dreamland Barbecue, basically on the campus of UAB here, University of Alabama, Birmingham. And I guess everybody knew this place was pretty good. I had never heard of it, but I'd also not done any research about restaurants or anything down here. But Dreamland Barbecue, check it out if you're ever in the area, because it was delicious. But not only that, as we're sitting there, and I'm there with John Denton and Katie Wu and Jeff Jones, Mark Emmert, who works for Cardinals Magazine. As we're sitting there, we can see out the big glass window in the front of the restaurant that a vehicle pulls up, and who gets out but Joe Torre, who's, of course, an executive with the MLB league office, but former Cardinal player, former Cardinal manager, former Yankee manager, of course, in the Hall of Fame for that. So he walks in with some other dignitaries, right? All the important people. And like not even 10 minutes later, Barry Bonds walks into this restaurant. and it was kind of crazy. Jeff took a picture that you may have seen on his Twitter feed of John Denton and I, and Joe Torre is basically photobombing in the back, although he's kind of the unwitting photobomb of the whole thing because he didn't really have a choice. It just happened to be where he was seated. So that was funny. But then I took a picture. I don't think I posted this one, but I took a picture of this banana pudding dessert that we had at the barbecue place, which was unbelievable. I know this is not a food podcast, but I'm just explaining like the vibe down here. Joe Torre on one side of me, and then the other side, I'm eating, and I'm taking a picture of my banana pudding, and in the background, photobombing the banana pudding photo is Barry Bonds, who is arguably at this point, rest in peace to Willie Mays, but now arguably Barry Bonds, I would have to say, is the greatest living MLB player, the greatest living baseball player that we've ever seen, who's still around, which was Willie Mays, I think, inarguably before his passing earlier this week, and now is probably Barry Bonds. Let me know in the comments if you have a different answer. This was something that you probably heard us talk about on Hot Take Central. Previous video I put up on the channel, Matt Whitener said it's got to be Barry Bonds, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, I think it has to be Barry Bonds as well. And he was in the same restaurant as me today, so that was kind of fun. We were the writers. We were all joking throughout the day. Yeah, well, we ate lunch with Barry Bonds, kind of sorta. But it was also funny that Jeff told the waitress, that's Barry Bonds that you're waiting on over there. And the stories about Barry Bonds, maybe he's a little prickly and doesn't necessarily want to be bothered, sort of thing. But the waitress, man, in true Southern hospitality fashion, she turns around and, "Are you really Barry Bonds?" And just wanted to talk him up. And he was great about it. And I didn't hear what they were saying, but he was smiling and chatting with the waitress, really friendly. So that was nice. I'd have to imagine if you're someone in sports as prominent as Barry Bonds, whether you're considered a nice guy or a not so nice guy or whatever it is, you probably get hounded so often that it's hard for me to judge that one interaction that you might have with somebody who's so prominent or famous, whatever the case might be. Because my goodness, to go through your daily life in a public space and not really be able to have any semblance of privacy, I could understand where that could get frustrating. But anyway, that's a tangent as well. I promise you I'm going to get into the content of the game here. But that was kind of the vibe of down here. You're having lunch with Barry Bonds and Joe Torre as they're playing a game in a neighborhood at a historic ballpark, the oldest ballpark in America. 1910 is when Rickwood Field first opened. And you can't park around there. MLB had a gajillion tents set up. Like I said, they did a great job, but it was also you weren't seeing this field in its context of what it would look like day to day. And hopefully now it's day to day is going to be spruced up compared to what it had been with MLB doing the work that was put in and the infrastructure and things like that. But man, it still feels like the old ballpark, right? Like you're in a place with some history, and that was really cool to be able to see. But no parking around here. Shuttle buses from I park at Legion Field, which is the football stadium. I believe UAB plays there or used to play there. At any rate, took the shuttle over. You had tents for concessions. You had tents for the clubhouse itself. Like the whole Cardinals clubhouse was a gigantic tent. And I'll tell you what, that thing had no business being as icy cold as it was in the dressing area of the clubhouse. They were piping in that air conditioning. I don't know who's in charge of that technology, but I need some of that in my house because, oh my goodness, it was really comfortable. And it was a tent, and they had the AC just piped in, gigantic. It was just like gigantic pipes, I guess is all it was, piped in directly toward a couple of the lockers. I don't know if the veteran players are like, yeah, I want the locker right next to the air pipe. Give me the air vent. But anyway, it was all, pop up. And like I said, did a great job of it. Still being able to pull off an event of this magnitude while you felt and sensed the character of the place that you were at. It just was a really cool and unique thing. I hope MLB comes back here. I know that there are some other historic stadiums that they would be considering going to beyond just this one. But from what I understand, a couple of years ago, they were talking about maybe not even being able to keep this place around and maybe shutting it down because they couldn't play minor league games here anymore on a regular basis due to just deteriorated conditions of the building. And so for having this event, you pump some infrastructure into it. I wonder if it's more viable now or if it was just maybe a one-off that they maybe will still be hesitant to use it in the future. I know the AA Birmingham Barons play at a different stadium in town, so they just don't really use Rickwood Field anymore. But it's really cool, and I feel like it's important that these historic venues be restored, but also just kept around and kept in circulation. Obviously, Fenway Park and Wrigley Field are really the two in MLB that we know of and see, but there are other such venues around the country, not too many of them, but man, I don't think we ever want to lose another one, you know? It's just too important, I think, to remember the history, remember the good and the bad, right? The fact that these games played at Rickwood Field were games of the Negro League, and you know, if all were the way that it was supposed to be, Negro leagues would not have had to have been a thing. It would have been integrated far sooner than it was, and everybody can play this great game. So just aspects of that I don't know. I think it's important, and I'm really glad to have had the exposure to it this. I was going to say this weekend, but really it's just been over the past 17 hours or so since I rolled into town. And I'll be recording this, heading to bed, and getting up and driving back home. So it was a quick jaunt for me in Birmingham, but man, I really enjoyed it. And that Southern hospitality thing is real. All the people that I met and the a bunch of it took a bunch of local staffers, people that were working the event, who man, everybody I ran into was just so friendly. So it was really cool. 100% aces as far as I'm concerned for this event and everybody who had a hand in putting it together. But let's go ahead. And I know normally I'm talking Cardinals way before 18 minutes into the podcast, so I hope you bear with me because I just wanted to share a little bit about the experience. And if there's an aspect of it that I didn't touch on that you want to hear more about, ask me about it in the comments. And we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, for days to come. And there may be some things that I remember and share later on that I forgot to mention tonight. But let's talk about the game itself because this was important as the Cardinals, of course, are scrapping, trying to find their way in the standings, trying to get above 500. They got back to 500 with the win tonight, and that's still good enough for a wild card spot as of the moment with everything else that's going on in the National League. All these teams vying are a little bit below 500, except for the Cardinals, who are now at 37 and 37. Padres, D-backs are a game below 500. Pirates, Nationals are 2 down. Cubs are 3, as are the Mets. The Giants are now 4, along with the Reds. All of those teams within a game and a half of the Padres currently for the third wildcard spot, which means all of them within 2.5 games or less of the Cardinals, who are right now at the number 2 wildcard spot. And Andre Pallante had a hand in making sure the Cardinals could get back to 500 tonight. Look, this was a weird situation because you had the bullpen game on Wednesday. Kyle Gibson, last minute, warming up. They say, he can't pitch. Or he has to tell the team, I can't pitch. Liberatore goes on 0 days rest and starts the game. And they roll with another few relievers out of the bullpen just to try and get through the thing. And basically all those guys you figure are going to mostly be unavailable for Thursday in Birmingham. So they call up Adam Kloffenstein. It seems like a foregone conclusion that he's going to make his debut. But then Andre Pallante pitches into the 6th inning, which he's more than capable of doing. He's done it before. But I think coming off the heels of a start in which Ollie Marmol removed Pallante in the middle of the 4th inning after 3 1/3, and it's like, okay, we don't really know what they're going to get from Pallante in this one, even though I think that's not a fair characterization toward him because it wasn't his fault that he was taken out of the game as early as he was. He was moderately efficient at 59 pitches and could have potentially been able to work through that jam and even throw the 5th inning if he would have been given like the normal allotment of a pitch count to do so and to work with. But Pallante ended up doing a nice enough job today. The final line score doesn't indicate that he had a very good start. 5 1/3, 5 earned runs, 7 hits, scattered some walks in there as well. But really, when he left the game in the 6th inning, if Andrew Kittredge comes in and is able to strand those inherited runners, it would have looked a lot better for Palante. But Kittredge was hit around a little bit before finding his way through the rest of that 6th inning and allowing a couple more runs to score. Tightening things up, 6-5 Cardinals, and the Cardinals built their lead on really the backs of just a handful of guys who brought it today. Masyn Winn set the tone at the top, as I mentioned a little earlier, with the 2 runs scored, had the double, had the walk. Alec Burleson is swinging the bat really well. He was 2 for 3, scoring 3 runs in this game. Paul Goldschmidt had a pretty good game. He was 1 for 4. There was another line shot that almost ate the shortstop Nick Ahmed alive earlier in the game when you had the Sunfield going on, but the ball basically caught him rather than him catching the ball. So if that ends up going as a hit, if Goldie hits it a step to Ahmed's left or right, there's no way he catches it and sees it to catch it. So it could have been 2 for 4, but 1 for 4 for Goldie. Gorman had a couple of sacrifice RBIs, flyouts to plate those runs in the early innings. And Brendan Donovan was really the star of the show. He's from Alabama, grew up in this area, and goes 3 for 4 in the game with a mammoth home run to right field. I don't know if the StatCast stuff was up and operational and, let's say, accurate for this game, but I do want to check to see. And y'all listening might already know this. It was kind of a whirlwind for me, so I didn't get a chance to look into the StatCast and dig in. They said 380 feet for Donovan's homer. I just don't know how that's possible to. I mean, that's 50 feet over the wall, so maybe. I think it's like 330 some odd out to right. But they've got the old concrete wall that used to be the original dimensions at Rickwood Field. And I just don't think it extends maybe all the way to right, or maybe it does. And there's, again, if you're watching on the broadcast, I kept rewatching this home run to see if I could figure out where the ball went, because after the game, we're standing on the field and Turner Ward, Cardinals hitting coach, hands a baseball to Brendan Donovan and says, "Here's your ball." So I had tweeted out, "Hey, that's a special ball. They might want to find that one." And I think it was a gentleman with MLB security who was walking by and saw it, and he said he one-hopped the clubhouse, which I was trying to think in my mind, well, how far back is that? There's a lot of tents over there that aren't the clubhouse, but I couldn't really put it together. All I know is it was an absolute moonshot and cleared the fence for sure by 50 feet, I thought. If it was 380 something out to, or pardon me, if it was listed at 380 and 332 was the right field footage there to get it out, then about 50 is what they're claiming. I think it had to have been even more than that, man. They're going to say it was 380. I'm thinking 480. I'm just going to call it. 480, by the way, is about what it would have taken to get it out of the original Rickwood Field. And I put this out on TikTok and YouTube. I put a YouTube short together, so if you missed it, go check that out. But also on my TikTok at bschaeffer12, I was able to post the whole video because YouTube shorts only cap you at 1 minute, whereas this one was almost a 2-minute video. And so I put all of that on TikTok. The original dimensions were like 478 out to sort of the left center field area, close to center, but I think shaded a little bit to the left side. At any rate, you would need to hit the hell out of the ball to hit it out of the original dimensions. But I think it's so cool that the concrete wall is still there, 50, 60 feet or whatever it is beyond, maybe 80 feet in some spots because it was 400 to dead center now in the current iteration of the ballpark. But just another little wrinkle of the history of it. And there's an X that they marked on the outfield wall in left center or closer to left field that says 467. This is where a player once hit a ball off the top of the wall, and they marked the spot that he hit a ball 467 feet and didn't leave the yard. Just cool stuff like that, man. Quirks that you don't get that kind of stuff at a lot of ballparks nowadays because, a lot of ballparks nowadays don't have that kind of history since 1910 attached to them. But that's another wrinkle that was cool of the experience today that I forgot to mention until now. But nevertheless, Brendan Donovan really showed out, and he helped to establish the Cardinal lead. Good for Gorman to get a couple of RBI swings as well. He doesn't get any hits in the game, but 2 sacrifice flies and consecutive at-bats to get his game going really did help, along with the job done by Masyn, Winn, and Brendan Donovan and others to set the tone for the Cardinals and get the scoring going early. There may be some valid criticisms or some accusations of juiced balls involved in this game. If you saw the Ramos home run to the opposite field, hit it to the same direction as Brendan Donovan, but Ramos is a right-handed batter. It really looked like he popped one up to short right. And then you just saw Alec Burleson, the adventure in right field that he was on, trying to figure out what the hell is happening to this baseball. And it just kept going and going and going until it was over the fence. So the Giants were able to tie things up after the Cardinals scored 3 in the first. The Giants scored all their runs on the Ramos homer in the third. But the Cardinals bounced right back to keep adding on in the bottom of the third. They score a couple more runs, one of those being the second Gorman sacrifice fly, and then a wild pitch that scored Alec Burleson, which this was another wrinkle of the ballpark. There's a lot of ground in the backstop area behind home plate before the ball actually hits the backstop. Evidently, it used to be back in the day something like 85 feet behind home plate, to where I think I heard this on the broadcast, and I was kind of piping through the radio broadcast and the TV broadcast on my MLB app on my phone, and I cannot remember which broadcast said it, but those out there who heard it can maybe let me know and help out in the comments. But basically that Bo Jackson, when it was 85 feet here at Rickwood Field between home plate and the backstop, he was able to score from first on a pass ball, which is just tells you the kind of athlete that Bo Jackson is. But Alec Burleson did not need to score from first. I'm sure he could have. Great wheels, obviously. But he scores from third on the wild pitch there to make it a 5-3 Cardinal lead. The Cardinals were able to tack on one more run thanks to Brendan Donovan in the 5th inning. And that was when the bottom of the the top of the 6th inning comes to fruition as Palante dealing with some danger. Kittredge comes in. The Cardinals were double barrel in the bullpen at this point. I thought that would maybe be where you see Kloffenstein until the innings started to get away from Palante. And you can make the case as far as if we want to get into like the management of the pitching staff, which again, I know that there are folks out there. You have a lot of thoughts on Ollie Marmol and how the staff is being managed, but it has not been easy these last few days with obviously the Gibson thing happening on Wednesday and just the sheer volume for this bullpen. It's been a lot to juggle, so I'm gonna cut Ollie some slack. But I would think maybe that spot in the 6th inning, once you get Palante through 5 innings, allowing only 3 runs, not exactly sure where his pitch count was. For the game, Palante ended up at 95. So, you get into some trouble in the 6th, and then they pull you. I'm sure the pitch count was such that it made sense to bring him back out. But I thought, well, that Kloffenstein is here, right? So if he's only going to be here for a day, which maybe that's not the plan now, I kind of thought it would have been coming in, not to, pour cold water on this whole exciting debut by Kloffenstein, which we will hear from Adam Kloffenstein here in a moment. There was some really good stuff that you'll only hear here because it was me and 2 other writers that were there talking in the tent to Kloffenstein until Brian Kennedy, who is my teammate over at KMOV, showed up. I don't know which parts of it he got on camera because I think he showed up midstream, but the Kloffenstein audio, you do not want to miss it. I promise you that. So stick with me. But my point about pouring cold water on it would be like, look, I kind of thought the way this lined up is you get this guy to pitch 3 or 4 innings in relief, you save everybody else from your bullpen, and then you probably send him back down for Gallegos or, whatever it ends up being because Gio was not activated for the day today. I think the reason for that is originally, and the Cat had said on the broadcast Wednesday they were going to, I think they were going to until the Gibson thing happened, and then you had to reorganize things, and basically Kloffenstein made more sense today than Gio in case you did need a multi-inning performance from somebody. But as it turned out, the 8th inning in a 1-run game was sort of the role that Giovanni Gallegos was coming into the year supposed to be able to fill. But it was Kloffenstein that was activated or that was promoted from the minors, and so he gets that spot in the 8th inning, which I was moderately surprised by, but also if you look at the circumstances of the bullpen, I didn't have the full list from Ollie of who was unavailable today, but you can do some math. they used Kittredge, King, Kloffenstein, and Helsley. JoJo, would he have been available? Yes, but you look at that spot in the 8th inning, it was a bunch of righties consecutively. So as much as it is a debut for Kloffenstein, and he hasn't been in those situations like a Roycroft where they had worked him up from no leverage to then deciding that he is capable of leverage, and that hasn't really worked out yet, but you get my point. Normally they ramp you up. Ollie Marmol did not have, I think, the luxury of ramping Kloffenstein into that situation. And it's so goofy sometimes when you do have a pitcher that comes up, he's a starter in the minors, and he's not like a huge stuff guy necessarily, good stuff, but it's not like he's out there throwing 100 where you can go, oh, that guy profiles as a late inning reliever now. He's going to come in and be a legit setup man or a closer. It's not really the case with Kloffenstein. You thought he was going to come in and pitch multiple innings, but the spot that they needed was a right-hander to take on that right-handed heavy portion of the lineup in the 8th, and so it was Kloffenstein that got the chance to do it. The funny part of it is he didn't know that he was pitching in the 8th inning of a one-run game until after he had finished. I know that sounds crazy, but I kind of believe him. The earnestness with which he said it after the game tells me that he had no idea. The bullpen down there, it's beyond the outfield walls, and the visibility is really rough, where you can't really see too much outside the chain link windows, essentially, of what's going on. So he said he knew it was a close game, but didn't really know what inning for sure it was, and went out there, had his heart beaten out of his chest, and went 1, 2, 3, and it wasn't until he got back to the dugout that he kind of took stock of the situation and realized, oh, I just was the setup man for Ryan Helsley because this is a one-run game, and the next time we're out in the field, it's going to be the 9th, and Helsley's coming in after me. So that was sort of the gist of it, but he tells it better than I do. So in his own words, I will let y'all hear Adam Kloffenstein, Cardinal pitcher who made his debut, the first and only MLB player in history to make a regular season debut at Rickwood Field, because this was the first regular season game played in MLB at Rickwood Field, and that's a distinction that he'll have forever. He had a bunch of friends and family in the crowd. He was able to hang out with them on the field and take pictures after the game. It was really, really neat to see. But listen to Adam Kloffenstein talking about his outing and not knowing necessarily that he was pitching in the 8th inning of a one-run game until after he was done doing that thing.
Well, the funny thing is that out there the visibility's not great, so I knew it was a close game. I wasn't exactly even sure what inning it was, but I just heard him say, I got up a couple times and I heard him say, Klopp, you're in the game, and my heart rate spiked and I couldn't feel my body, and I was like, all right, let's do it. I was throwing the ball all over the place in the bullpen, and I was like, well, we'll see. And I worked with Pedro before, so when I got in, I told Pedro, hey, I've been a little wild right now, just be as big as you can and let's just get 3 outs. I said, hey, you got 3 righties coming up, which 3 righties is my game, so felt good though.
Did you look up and see 8th at some point, or
look up and see what?
Like 8th inning at some point?
When I got in the dugout.
Once you got after?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, who's coming in after me? And then I turned around and saw it was 6-5. And the 8th, I was like, oh, Helsley's coming in. And I was like, I just set up for Helsley? No way.
I guess that's just focusing on what your job is and not anything else.
I mean, there was already enough stuff going on that it was like, that's the last thing I needed to know was that it was 6-5 and there was, in the 8th that I had Soler. I didn't need to know any of that.
Masyn,
I was going to say, did it click in your mind? The first guy up was Soler?
Well, it's funny because I'm from Houston. I've actually watched some Soler do some things in Houston that I was like, we'll just keep the ball down.
So how about that from Cardinals pitcher Adam Kloffenstein? Made his debut on Thursday. Talking about being out there in the bullpen, I was throwing it all over the place. So when I got in there, I told Pedro, just be big back there for me, and we'll get these 3 outs. 3 righties, that's my game. We got this. Like, very refreshing personality. I like me some Adam Kloffenstein. I kind of forgot about the Kloffenstein thing. Yeah, we got to keep calling him that. He was really cool and just absolutely thrilled to have the debut that he had. His mom grew up, he said, an hour outside of Birmingham in a town called Gadsden, Alabama. And so, the whole family was there. His dad was down there on the field. Just really, really neat to see that for him and to be able to come through. But the fact that he had no idea that it was, I just set up for Ryan Helsley. Cool. Like, he didn't even know. And then Hells comes in. He walks the leadoff man. No Hells bells, by the way, either. I thought that was kind of a miss. And I will say, for as much money as MLB put into Rickwood and made sure to spruce it up a bit, they were definitely still lacking in the LED red light show department because there was nothing like that for Helsley when he came out. Kidding, of course. I thought they would have played the song, though. They played Matt Carpenter's song, at least the second at bat they did. And then the third at bat he didn't take. Fermin pinch hit for him, but they still played his song because I don't think they knew the pinch hitter was coming. So we got Long Hot Summer Day by my favorite band, Turnpike Troubadours, which has been a long-time walk-up song of Matt Carpenter. One of the underrated parts of Carp being back with the Cardinals this year is just bringing back the walk-up song. And always used to enjoy that when he was the leadoff man, and that would be kind of the way the game would really get underway in the bottom of the first inning at Busch with Matt Carpenter coming up to the plate. But Long Hot Summer Day playing on the longest hot summer day because today was the summer solstice, of course. So I thought that was kind of a neat touch. Anyway, no Hells bells. He didn't need it. Did walk the first guy. Gave up a 2-out hit, but had a couple of strikeouts in the inning and was able to get through it and break the franchise record for consecutive saves without blowing a save. Was tied with Alex Reyes coming in with 24 in a row and ended up getting number 25 tonight to stand alone with that franchise record for the Cardinals closer. And yeah, it's been a little bit more of an adventure for him of late, but he's settling in. And again, to be able to have that type of streak tells you he's doing something right. So I understand that there's maybe some more tense moments when it comes to Ryan Helsley than we're used to seeing, as he still, I think, works through a little bit of command trouble. But and it was funny, too, the Fox broadcast kept calling his slider a cutter, if you were paying attention to the score bug, which other than that little minor quibble, the score bug was really cool. The old-timey feel to the broadcast was really cool. I know they went with like the 1950s, literally made it black and white for at least one of the innings. Was kind of neat to see. Props to MLB, props to everybody involved, and props to the Cardinals too, because they got the win 6-5 on Thursday night at Rickwood Field. So they'll go back home tomorrow. I'll go back home tomorrow, and then the Cardinals will resume their series with the Giants on Saturday after a much-needed off day for everybody involved, but especially the bullpen and the pitching staff. Kyle Gibson, I think, is going to be slotting in here before too long. I want to say that Ollie Marmol said he would go for Tuesday, though, so they may not really upset the apple cart too much with their rotation, but that could all be pending as far as the decisions they decide to make. On the off day, they might have a little bit more time to revisit it, but giving him the extra couple of days after the back issues. He was actually in the bullpen tonight, technically available to come out if needed, but I think that was going to take some emergency circumstances for Gibson, but I think he felt bad because it's the kind of guy he is, but he felt bad for the position he put the bullpen in on Wednesday by not being able to pitch and being the late scratch. So he was out there and willing to do anything needed, but it wasn't needed tonight. The Cardinals got through it with their normal assortment of relief pitchers, plus Adam Kloffenstein, who made the debut and got it done. So Cardinals back to 500. I think it's going to be important to maybe try to wax off the rest of this series. Just split it, and you do win 2 out of 3, and you stay at 500. If they could sweep it, then you wouldn't be talking about 500 anymore. You'd be talking about being a couple of games above and seeing how high you can climb, potentially to challenge the Brewers at the top of the division. We'll see if that's something that could be in the cards, but I definitely need to get to bed because it's late. That's going to do it for this edition of Be Safe Daily. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening and for bearing with me as I got to tell a little bit of the flavor of what was going on down here in Birmingham. Thank you guys for supporting me in the way that you do. Check out the channel memberships if you'd like to join. That's it, though. I'm out of here. We'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily. Peace.